I noticed the deathly silence that has descended across much of the left and our progressive friends now that the peace in Gaza appears to have kicked in at some level or t'other. Trump has gone from being evil incarnate and the worst person on planet Earth to generating the wrong kind of peace, maybe? That would be my assumption of what their concern is. Or is it basically any peace at all? The silence is nearly as deafening as obviously watching Hamas butchering other tribal clans within the Gaza Strip to maintain some semblance of power. Again, you don't have to like Israel, you don't have to like the war to perhaps be willing to turn around and point these things out and kind of go, this is unacceptable. Or that in the case of Trump, that maybe he did a good thing. I know I do. I try very hard, and I'm incredibly political on certain things. I make no qualms about that. But I do try my best to sit there, and when someone has done something that I think is actually very worthwhile, whether I agree with it or I politically agree with that person or not, I try and call them out and say congratulations, and that's a good job, and that's where it should be. You should be able to have that level of subtlety and flexibility in your approach. But I think it steps back to a broader, going back to Gaza, it speaks to a broader issue that I have called out from the beginning of the Israel-Gaza war, which is the sheer hypocrisy of things from a lot of people, including people I know. These are people who've raged about the war in Gaza whilst happily ignoring what started this round of it. The Palestinian Israel argument has been ongoing, conflict has been ongoing for 70 years, 80 years, whatever it is. I'm not claiming that it's, this is not part of a longer thing, but the sheer hypocrisy of these people who have spent the last 3 years ranting and raving over the Gaza war and yet happily have ignored every single other conflict now or in the past of a similar scale or even worse. Where has been the outrage over the protests over when the Yazidis were being genocided in Iraq? Where are the mass protests over the butchering of Christians by Muslims in Nigeria? What about the Uyghurs in China? Complete silence. Even now, look at Sudan. Sudan is, I believe, the worst humanitarian crisis in the world, with millions expected to die and thousands dying every month now, and yet nothing. No one cares. No one cares at all. And this is really what gets you more than anything else, is just the sheer hypocrisy of the whole thing. It really is. But then what I get is, I always get told is people go, well, I didn't know about those things. So, well, you only have to go look at a website, go look at the news. Or maybe you should stop taking your news from the BBC and other news channels that are clearly biased in certain directions. You can shape the news and you can shape information warfare in a number of ways. One is that you can taint the information that's being passed around to people, but the other is you can simply exclude speaking about certain things so that people just don't hear about them, or they don't want to hear about them. And that's what the BBC and other news channels do as much as anything else. But even without that, when 7th of October happened, and I woke up on the day, and because I'm a Twitter freak and I sleep very badly, I woke up and was looking on Twitter, and I was seeing videos of stuff being broadcast on the day. 2 years? 2 years or 3 years? I think it's 2 years later. I know people who are also concerned about Gaza who to this day have still not bothered to watch a single frame of what happened on that day, nor looked at any pictures. And that goes back to that hypocrisy, because these people don't want to know what goes on. You know, and every side does that to a certain extent. You know, like I'm quite certain there are people who support Israel that probably haven't looked at the pictures of what's gone in Gaza. But, you know, I would argue that there's probably more of an awareness, I could be wrong, on those people who do support Israel. You know, 2 years later, 3 years, 2 years? 2 years later, I think it is. I'm going to actually look that out as we speak. When was it? 2003. 2 years later. To have not looked at any of it, that's willful ignorance. That is, you choose to not look at stuff because you don't want to look at it. And it's a thread that runs through all of this. People basically have decided they've taken a position on this and so much more, and they don't want to look around and have to think about it any more than that. And I'm sick of it on all sides. I really am. I get really, really tired of it on all sides. It's not that hard. I've supported, for example, Israel all the way through this war because I've always said that there's no point in returning to the status quo with Hamas in charge. There is no future for Gaza and the people of Gaza, and even any kind of peace process or kind of solution with Hamas in charge, right? However, 3-4 months ago, and I took enough stick for it, I started looking at it, and then Israel's doing this, that, and the other. It's like, it's enough now. It's been 2 years. You clearly aren't going to remove Hamas from power, and you cannot forever maintain millions of people in a war zone, particularly children. Now, is it that I've suddenly gone soft on Hamas? No. You know, I take a pretty reasonable line. I take a pretty steadfast line when it comes to Islamists. You know the best Islamists? Dead ones. And I mean that. Dead. Okay? I don't think that these people are people you can negotiate with. I don't think they are nice people. And I don't want them in my country, and I don't want them anywhere else. But I was still accused of being, you know, you've gone soft, whatever. I'm like, fine, whatever. But the facts have changed. I'm looking at the data in front of me. I'm thinking ahead. I'm trying. Can everyone else start doing that a little bit more? Particularly on this subject, or these subjects. And there's two separate subjects here. There is the war on Gaza, and then there is a broader discussion around Islamism and Islam. And again, we don't like talking about that because it makes people really uncomfortable. I had a conversation with a colleague the other day who literally, clearly was very uncomfortable over it. And that's fine, I understand that. But can we just stop with the willful blindness? Can we please stop actually thinking that, you know, that you've got to be willing to look at all the data. And there isn't. There really, really isn't. And you see it like, particularly, and again, I'd say it's more prevalent on the left, and I think it is. The right does it to a certain extent, over things like the economy more than anything else. We've all got our blind spots about the economy. The right does, you know, we just need to do it, we just need more Thatcherism. Much of the north of England would disagree with you that basically Thatcherism was a blindingly good job. Thatcherism led to uber globalism, which has helped to pick the country clean. So, you know, maybe we need some nuance there. I get that. But on the left, it's there in spades. It's like immigration in the UK, and it's like you can't have any subtlety. You can't have any nuance over a discussion. You know, it's just like, you're an evil person. You're a fascist. You're a racist for talking about immigration. Yeah, but what about the downsides to immigration? There are no downsides to immigration. Okay. Well, I'm pretty certain there's a lot of people in the country who disagree with you. Again, your view on immigration may be wholly positive, but then, you know, nothing's wholly positive. Okay, you eat enough lettuce, it'll make you sick, and lettuce is quite good for you. You do enough you take vitamins every day, it's very good for you. If you take enough vitamins, it will make you very sick. So can we just have some like nuance? Can we actually start having some people who want to talk about where we are? And can the left, certainly my historical side, please, please, please actually start looking at the world and realising it's not all the time the enemy of your enemy is your friend. Yeah? the Palestinian Israel thing. Oh, they're really good. Oh, well, Hamas. Well, maybe not, but kind of. And then you come over here and they're like, oh yeah, but these are great. Let's go marching with them. And then it's 2 minutes later, like the same people are like, well, we hate gays. We're going to throw them off buildings. Okay, we don't look surprised. That's what they believe in. These aren't nice people. These aren't, like, don't make out Islamists and much of conservative Islam is not nice. It's not some wonderful, progressive, Eden to embrace. Functionally, they believe in something that's completely against everything that much of the left has traditionally believed in. And when I say much of that, I mean, how can you have an electoral coalition with people including gays, women, trans activists, whatever else, with militant Islamists who are, misogynistic, homophobic, and frankly so conservative, they make the Catholic Church look like blazing progressives by comparison. But that's the illusion, the delusion that we've got, and this is it goes back to the point that I made at the beginning, which is, when you're sitting there talking about Israel, it's the wanton ignorance. They know that at some level. They must know that. It's funny talking to someone I know who is a member of the Green Party, and he's like, pretty much every progressive left-wing opinion he's got, he's all lined up on that, and he's like totally, anti-Israel and everything else. Then he gets to Islam in the UK, and he's like, oh, well, like this, and you can feel good, like getting uncomfortable. But then when you draw his attention to the fact that these are the people you're in coalition with, he gets very uncomfortable. And then also, when you for example, you talk about immigration, you go, well, actually, we're importing tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of these people every year because through illegal and legal migration. Again, but then he does that thing that like they did on 7th of October. He kind of just does his pivot and looks in the other direction because he doesn't want to deal with that reality. So can we just start getting real? Please, can we just start getting real about it on all sides? Can you look at the world in the whole? Can you look at the stuff that makes you uncomfortable? Can you actually think about that? And you know what? When new data arrives, actually, instead of just discounting it because you find it personally uncomfortable to your worldview, can you actually take that and try and process that into some sort of, amended worldview? I was reminded of, I'm very interested in the financial markets now, and I invest and everything else. And I literally watched a series of podcasts or interviews, with fund managers, and the very successful ones, like, well, what makes you successful? And nearly every one of them says, what makes the most important thing about being a successful fund manager, these are people who run tens, if not hundreds of billions of pounds of other people's money, okay, it's a huge responsibility, is a willingness to change your opinion as new data arrives. Because there's no point in being right if the right is in 2 years' time for them. Because that's not how the financial markets work. So you've got to have an opinion. And if your opinion gets tested, and you suddenly look at it and go, it's wrong, you can't just double down, because then you're losing money hand over fist. And it's that attitude that you see. It is so prevalent on the left. But you do see it on the right. I'm not claiming you don't see it on the right. And we just cannot continue as a country, as a civilization, with people who cannot just turn around occasionally and go, you know what, that's new data, you're right, how does that change things? We've got to do that. And people have got to get into the habit of being able to look at stuff, even the really appalling stuff. I mean, I sat there over this October the 7th thing with people and said, I'll even pull you up videos and stuff. It is horrific. And I could see them go, oh no, I don't want to look at that. And you're like, yeah, you don't want to, because it's so awful. But sometimes you have to look at the awful things, not because of some sort of weird fetish that you get from some people to look at truly ghastly stuff. You need to face the reality, look reality in the face and go, right, okay, How does that change it? Maybe it doesn't change your mind. Not just on Gaza, but on anything else. Maybe it doesn't change your mind. Let's take the Sudan thing. Maybe you sit there and you see the pictures and you do your research on Sudan and you sit there and go, this is appalling. But I actually think that's more important because for whatever reason. Okay, fine. That's fine. At least you've formed an educated position. I don't mind. I have no objection to people who form educated decisions, opinions, if that opinion is different to mine. I really don't. You sit there and we can have a debate, and I'll go with this, and you'll go with that, and I'll go, well, you give me your workings on that, and you go, blah, 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 and I'm like, oh, I actually disagree with you fundamentally on that, and I can criticise you here, but at least I can understand why you've made your decision. There is something there. You've actually hung your decision off some sort of logic, off of some sort of knowledge that goes above and beyond. And until more people are willing to do that, to do the work, to sit there, then I just don't think we're going to move further forward. And I think that the splits in society on Gaza, on Israel, on Islamism, on migration, everything else are going to get even worse because you're existing in three echo chambers. You have people on different sides who are just not listening to anything else. We've got to get better at this, and I'm just not willing to put it up with people. I'm going to call it out with people now. Do your work. By all means, have an opinion, but at least do the work and actually be willing to defend it. I'll sit there and happily debate anyone they like. Anyone that turns around to me and says, Dan, I don't agree with you on anything else, I am always happy to have a video call, a telephone call, or meet in person to have a polite but robust exchange of views. I have no problem with defending my views. I will do that. I'm not going to do it over social media or text-based systems because it's painful. You never get the interaction you want. But that's because I think I've at least come up with opinions that I can back up. And I wish everyone else would do that. I really, really wish people would spend the time. Steel man your opinions. And the only way you can do that is by going out, putting them on the table and going, look, let's have a debate. You can prove me right or wrong, and you can provide me with evidence, and I'm going to look at that evidence and I'm going to take it on board or not. But can we please move this conversation on? Can we please move on our debating? It's no longer good enough. And I apologise, I have some sort of fluey thing, hence my crazy voice.